So guys, in this session, we're going to have a little bit of a panel that's talking about mind shift. We've got some people here to chat about how you kind of go from thinking about automation to actually doing automation. So guys, I'm going to give you a mic. Maybe we'll just start here. Just tell us who you are, where you're from, and if you're team no-op or team Noop.
I'm Austin Bland with C Ford from Cincinnati. I'm team Nope. I'm just going to be wrong.
Just straight, team Nope.
Just
okay?
team Nope.
The third team now. Okay, thanks, Austin.
Yep. Been automating with Roost for about 2 years, and hey, I've been to I've spoken at every Flow conference so far. So
awesome, thank you.
Go.
My name's Chris Williamson. I'm team no-op. I grew up in Lansing, Michigan. Used to run a solo MSP. Got picked up by a company called Convergence Networks a couple years ago. Started off as a solutions architect, moved into a DevOps engineer role, and I've been doing Roost ever since.
Hi, my name is Aaron Birch. I'm on Noop. I'm with Transform from the Cleveland area of Ohio. More specifically, I'm from Cuyahoga Falls. I've only been in IT for about 2.5 to 3 years, and I now manage the entire automation and development portion of my company.
Awesome, thanks guys. For those of you who don't know me, my name is George Smith. I'm the community manager here at Roost. I am very much in the team Noop camp. Just by show of hands for the folks in here, put your hand up if you're team no-op. Oh, that's a shame. What about team Noop? Yeah, definitely outnumbering all the other guys. It's the right team. Awesome, perfect. Put your hand up if you have no idea what that means. Excellent. Okay, great. We're all right on track. Okay, guys, let's kind of dive in with the first question. I think a lot of people understand automation is here. People are really excited to get started, but some people are a little bit trepidatious about getting started, particularly with teams that have non-technical members and bringing them on board. It can seem a little overwhelming. And you guys who are building workflows understand that you kind of need everyone to be speaking the same language. So my first question is, how do you kind of help create that culture of automation at the company you work for?
First thing I always do is I just kind of sit down and talk with my team members. I would say we all probably consider ourselves consultants with our customers, right? Well, you need to consult internally with your teams. You don't know their processes, right? If you go to billing, you probably don't know exactly how that process works. So you kind of just sit down, hash it out, and you understand what they do on a day-to-day basis and understand how that process works. Then from there, you can take it and kind of automate it step by step. It really goes back to you can't automate a process that isn't defined. So you get that process defined, and you kind of just work on it step by step from there.
It's also important to have buy-in from leadership, both at the top and champions within each department that you're trying to automate. Make sure they're on board to push adoption for their teams, because a lot of people are going to be resistant to change at first, and they're going to go, what is this? I don't need this. The current process works just fine. But once they start using it and they see the benefits, then you get this snowball effect where they're going to start using it more and more, and they're going to start asking you for these automations. Excuse me. Another good place to start would be internal IT, internal processes. If you can design, for example, going back to the old standby of user onboards, if you can onboard internal customers well, you want to design that process, because why would you expect a workflow that you've designed internally that is not working to work well for your customers?
My biggest thing has to be somebody has to play devil's advocate. Somebody has to play the technician who just came on board and may have overstretched on their resume or something like that. Somebody's got to play that devil's advocate of, I don't know what to do at all. And I think after kind of going through and getting everybody's opinion, kind of fielding everybody's, hey, how do you deal with this client? How do you deal with this procedure? You then have to have somebody go ahead and go, okay, now that I've made this, now that this is working before we actually deploy it out, pretend like you know absolutely nothing. Go ahead, run it, and let me know if you have any questions or anything like that. And it just kind of creates, oh, well, if I didn't know to go ahead and do this, then I wouldn't have known. And you can kind of go ahead and make a few changes from there, and those are the smaller changes that end up being bigger ones down the road.
Aaron, I'll let you keep the mic just to kind of answer my next question, because I think that's really good advice. But then the follow-up question that most people have is, okay, but like, where do I start? What do I do first? You know, a lot of people come into their automation journey with this idea that it's a dream machine. We can do lots of bits and pieces. Do you guys have a process or any techniques that you use to identify and prioritize the workflows that you want to build?
For that, it's a bit more difficult because of how our company is laid out. But how I try to approach it is if I'm at a point where I can either take on more workflows or take on more forms, or I can go ahead and I have it in my schedule to actually have time for a new development. Then what I try to do is a couple weeks before then, something like that, start trying to prep everything. Start trying to have people start thinking about those processes, start having people write down when they're doing those processes, what they run into, the one-off issues and things like that, and just kind of go from there.
Chris?
My advice would be to start with the things that are already built for you. Start with the crates. Assuming you're going into this knowing nothing about the automation platform you're using, it's easier to start with something that's pre-built and then look at the pieces that are working and aren't working and adjust it from there. As you gain more experience by doing that, you can go, oh, I see how they did this, and you can adapt that to your organization's specific needs. And that's going to go a long way toward both providing immediate value and allowing you to grow your skills at the same time.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with what Chris just said. The crates are just a great way to get that really quick win, to get started on your automation journey, look through them, understand how they work, and then you can start building something custom from there to handle your unique problems that you run into within your organization.
One of the things that once people start getting excited about automation, all of a sudden things click and you have people asking you to build certain workflows. But maybe sometimes there can be a bit of a knowledge gap there. I'm sure you see it all the time. Well, just in IT in general, everyone in this room does, right? Sees it in IT in general, where clients come and ask for certain things and you kind of go, oh, that's nice. No, it's not really how this works. So when that happens internally with automations, with people saying, hey, can we do X, Y, Z. What do you have any tips or tricks for anyone here today for how you kind of get everyone speaking in the same language? How you get people thinking about automation so they kind of can actually come to you and understand some of the basics of automation?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to the process. Like I need them to have a defined process, right? It really should be written down in documentation. And then once we have that written down, we know this is how it works, and this is us speaking the same language. It's just plain text, right? We're not doing code or building a workflow. We just look at words and understand how this process works. Then from there, you can just kind of go step by step and understand, okay, how do we do this? Is it viable to do with the products we have? And if so, you keep moving through that until you eventually have a finished product.
Absolutely, and just to build onto that, sometimes the process of defining that is almost or sometimes even more valuable than the automation itself. Because you'll go into an organization and they're like, well, we need to do these things in accounting, and you're like, okay, how do you do that? And you'll get 3 different answers from 3 different people, and then you'll identify, okay, there's a problem in the department here, you guys need to consolidate how you're doing this. And after they do that, you can sit down, and it could be Visio, Excalibur, whatever tool you want to use, and flow chart that process with them to get them really thinking about the pieces that are involved in whatever process you're trying to automate. And once that's all defined, then you can do the automation.
A lot of the times it also involves looking into the structure of how you're doing it entirely. Kind of like the speaker before us, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but mentioning standardizing processes and things like that. And that is one of the biggest things that you can go ahead and do to help, for the reason of as an example, we use group-based licensing a lot for a lot of our clients. And that is one of the easier ways to both manage it, deploy it, and everything like that. But not everybody is automatically set up like that. So as we're going ahead and setting up people in Roost, it has the option for that direct licensing like they initially had. But as we're putting them in Roost, we're also putting on kind of a task list to go ahead and switch them on over to that license base. As for internal employees asking for things that do not necessarily exist in the scope, we actually just had an issue with this as well. For example, PAX 8, you cannot sync the licensing, and you cannot schedule out the removals unless you're doing that inside of Roost and you're put a delay in the workflow and everything like that. And my manager came to me and asked me if we could go ahead and set up an auto syncing or a report that also includes the scheduled removals from PAX 8. I had to go ahead and explain that that API call just simply does not exist. And we had a little bit of back and forth on the best way to approach it and everything like that. And what we're going to end up doing is we are going to switch over to Roost handling all of that, so we can actually go ahead and have those reports made and 100% accurate and everything like that. So instead of taking the approach that we took before, removing a process, anything like that that is currently in there, we're working on the process while the other one is still being followed and everything like that.
Yeah, well, it's like Aaron says, you can't automate that process that doesn't exist, but standardization is so important. If you build something where, you're pulling from a database where it's first name, last name, but then there's another database, last name, first name, things aren't going to work out quite well. So I think that's critical, right? Standardization and speaking the same language. And a little cheat code for everyone here today. If you're using Roost and you're in Cluck University, you may have seen one of the courses, Automation Basics. That is a course I would 100% push to everyone who you're working with, regardless of whether they're using Roost or not. It's a super simple course that just goes through things like, what is an API? What is JSON? So, to your point, Aaron, whenever you're having those conversations, you were talking about the PAX 8 API. In my head, I was like, I've had conversations with people, and they're like, "What is an API?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, we really gotta take a step back here." So, in terms of those conversations, sometimes a challenge can be explaining how an automation works, but like showing the value, right? You guys are technical experts, very adept at building workflows, but I'm sure there's people that you work with that they don't really care about the APIs or the JSON. They just want to see the business value. So do you have any tips or tricks for how you kind of communicate and show the value of the workflows that you've built? Aaron, we'll start with you at the end.
That one's Roost time savings is amazing for that, because we can go back, call old tickets, see the total time that we put into those tickets. We can see the Roost save time. And then we can also go ahead and we can see that, hey, in these new workflows, or in these new tickets where we're running workflows, where we're running forms, the total time is no longer 8 hours, or the total time is no longer 6 hours. The total time on the ticket logged is an hour and a half. And you can see it right there. And then you can also go over to Roost and see the time savings over there as well. So there's kind of a couple ways to go ahead and approach that. And I think it's kind of, depending on how close you have that Roost time saving set up, is kind of the best way to show it across.
Another good step to take here is when you're talking with that department and having them define their process, one of the last questions you ask them should be, how much time are you spending doing what you're doing right now? Because then it's not you coming up with a number from wherever you're coming it up from. It's them telling you, this is how much time we're going to save. And it's much more difficult to argue with that as a benefit to automation. Sometimes people may want a little more data than you can get out of the base Roost dashboard. And one of the best ways to do that is a completion handler. that can just give you a record. If you attach it on all of your workflows that run really often, you can put that data very easily into whatever kind of data structure or SQL or wherever you want to store it, and pull out of that with Power BI or whatever kind of reports your stakeholders would want to see.
Yeah, and just to expand on it, there's of course a few key KPIs that you can touch. There's obviously the time savings, the most obvious one. There can be money in some cases. I've personally replaced an entire product, and so that's a money value per year. Or if executives want to look at it, they can say, how much do we pay this person? Okay, we saved 4 hours of their time. Do the math, and that's how much money we've technically saved by doing it. And the most difficult one to try and quantize is happiness, but when you make people's lives easier, in MSPs we tend to be a little bit smaller, or at least I am in a smaller one, about 35 people. Word kind of starts to get around like, hey, I don't have to do this thing anymore that I hated, and I'm just kind of happier working at my job. So yeah, just watch those KPIs.
Yeah, that's such a big one, the qualitative kind of like, I'm just happier at work. My technicians have been with me for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years because they're not hating their lives, stuck in the corner, clearing tickets manually time after time and dealing with irritating things. They're much happier in their jobs. So great call out. Chris, I'll start with you for this question. What advice would you have for MSPs that are apprehensive about getting involved with automation?
There's so many benefits. Even if you don't think you have the talent internally to start spinning this up, and you have departments that might be resistant, if you've got maybe some technicians, tier 2, tier 3 techs, that do PowerShell, that do scripting, that do these things, they can do it. They can transition to this kind of role. And it's maybe not as difficult as you think it is. Even if they're just having those thoughts in some of these departments, man, I wish I didn't have to go in and copy paste all this stuff into Excel every day. I mean, that's a great starting point to have the conversation. So just identifying those little opportunities and identifying the talent that you might already have, and maybe you don't have to go external for a full-time engineer hire. Or maybe you don't need to dedicate an entire department to this to start off with. And over time, you can grow that to a point where, okay, now we can justify these additional resources. We have this automation department, and there's a proven track record here, and you can go from there.
Aaron, we'll go ahead to you.
Yeah, to give my story, I was not a programmer before I touched a program like Roost. I never used anything like it, and frankly, I failed programming in college because it made zero sense to me. I just did not get the logic. But I started using a product like Roost, for example, and having that kind of low-code like mix of UI with the coding, it kind of started to make the blocks fall in place, and it kind of started to make sense. Especially when you have the community where you can go and look at what someone else did. Because I'm a very visual learner, and I can pick apart what they did, and I kind of start to understand how I do something right. And over time, over a period of 2 years, I've learned so much, probably more than I have in the rest of my career. So yeah, it's just, lean on the community, look in there, start learning, and you don't have to be an expert in coding or have that background. You just have to, someone mentioned this in one of the pre-days, you just have to have the ability to learn. You have to have that drive, and I think you can pick it up.
Darren, do you have any comments, or did you have any kind of feelings of like imposter syndrome or anything like that when you were starting out, or?
Well, I'm not even 3 years into tech, so imposter syndrome is absolutely huge being the head of automation. That will be a consistent through almost any technician's life, though. I have reached out to the people above me who have been in the field for 35, 45 years, and they still get imposter syndrome till this day. Our project engineer, I've talked to him about it. He still gets imposter syndrome up until this day. Just remember that you are putting in the work, you're putting in the knowledge for it, and that you do know your stuff.
And you guys touched on it, the community aspect of things. How helpful has that been seeing some of the questions and answers that come through on Discord? Have you guys find that helpful? Do you get a sense of joy whenever you're helpful to people? Can you talk a little bit about how Aaron always talks about there's been 0 MSPs that have been, successful without asking questions. You have to ask questions as part of your automation journey. And so our Discord server and other vendor Discord servers are full of those questions. So can you talk a little bit about how that's kind of helped, you level up as an automation specialist?
Yeah, I've ran into countless things where I've had to reach out to the Discord about, where I've had to, hey, I'm not sure how to even start approaching this. And the Discord is a great place because it's not necessarily just, hey, what's 1 + 1? It's 2. It's a great community space to go ahead to talk about why you're trying to approach it that way, to talk about if there's a different way. That was where I first heard the perfectionist will kill you or something along those lines, was actually from the Roost chat. And I try to help out when I can, whenever I'm in there. And yeah, it definitely feels good. And you kind of kick the imposter syndrome down the road a little bit whenever you answer one of those and somebody, is able to get a workflow up and running because of that or something.
Asking questions is free. And as a great man once said, how many MSPs have succeeded without ever asking a question? Was it 20?
It was maybe
0.
That's right,
0
0.
MSPs. So, even if you're not quite sure you need to ask the question, if you've got a little voice nagging in the back of your head, like maybe I should have someone sanity check this for me, or maybe you just want to share what you're working on, you should reach out and do that, because someone might speak up and go, have you considered this failure mode that's going to have catastrophic consequences? Have you considered this security implication of what you're doing? None of us are perfect, and everyone makes mistakes, and having another set of eyes, even if it's an external set of eyes that might not be your internal security team, might just be another developer. Sometimes that's what you need to ensure that everything's going to work the way you think it is, or to get that little extra step to get to the finish line with your workflow.
Yeah, definitely communicate in the Discord a lot. I've helped people a few times, and it feels great to know that I'm able to pass on my knowledge and help someone else. And then also asking questions and learning, because even 2 years in, there's a lot I don't know. There's plenty out there. Another great thing is they do their open mic on Fridays. Great place to just learn what's going on with the platform, as well as people from the community just show off what they do. I've done it a few times. And it's a great place not to just learn, but get you inspiration for where do I start? What's my next step? Where do I go from here, right?
Yeah, just seeing how different people approach problems and solve them in different ways, right? Sometimes there's more than one way to skin a cat, but we shouldn't be skinning cats anymore. Okay, we got a last few couple of questions. One thing, this is a bit of a curveball for you guys, because I didn't put this in our little email, so apologies in advance. But if you can cast your mind back to whenever you were first starting, let's say like you're out there in the audience at the beginning of your automation journey, what's one thing that you would like to say to that older version of you, or that younger version of you, I should say?
One mistake I definitely made is that Ruth said that you should start with something small, and I did not listen. And I immediately tried to do a custom build of the user onboarding. I managed it, but it's ugly and was not pretty to support. So definitely start with something small. I'd say getting into things like, let's say you just have a process you do once a day. It's like 5 tasks, Day 1, just start automating that first step of that task, do the rest manually. Day 2, start automating that second part of that task. And by the end of the week, you kind of have your first automation. So you just start small, don't stress, don't go from 0 to perfection. It's not going to work well most of the time. So yeah, just try something small and build it bit by bit.
Don't expect results to come overnight. That's advice to both yourself and whoever might be the management in the audience here. There's going to be a ramp-up period. It doesn't matter if you're a new developer or you're a seasoned industry pro. If you're picking up Roost, it works a little differently from other platforms. And it's going to help if you have that knowledge from other programming languages, other platforms, but any new tool requires some learning. So just take some time and make sure that's set aside in order to actually get up to speed on the platform, and then you can start setting those KPIs and expecting those results once that's happened. Another little tip for the actual developers out there in the audience, all of the built-in primitives in Jinja, you can call all of the Python methods on those. So you can look, in addition to Roost University, you can look at Python documentation, and all of those methods are available to manipulate your data however you want.
Main thing I would say is stop looking for perfection. There will always be one client, there will always be one user, there will always be an oddity somewhere. And if you sit there and try to account for every single oddity that there could ever be, you won't finish one workflow. You will end up with 0 time savings and just end up paying Roost for practice. With that, I started programming from a really young age, which is partially what helped me with my Roost journey. And I know Python and learned it for years, and that is one of the bigger things that helped with the Jinja structure. But even hopping into that, knowing Python and learning it for years upon years, learning C++, C#, even with all that, Jinja is entirely different. It's a different ballpark, and it works differently because just the function blocks and things like that. And it's going to take you some getting used to. You're not an idiot. Just remember, it's something new, and it's going to take some time.
Okay, so last question for you guys. What would you say to MSPs that say they just don't have time for automation? They're too busy to kind of get started.
Well, I'd start by asking them what they're spending the time on. And from there, it's a very natural conversation to, well, what could you do if you freed up that time? Because every MSP is going to have lulls in business. No one has 100% utilization. If you have 100% utilization, occasionally you're going to have 120% utilization, then you're going to have a problem. So you're going to be able to find a few hours somewhere for someone to just kind of peck away at this. And once they complete something, that's going to free up more time. And then it's going to free up more time. And it's going to turn into this snowball where eventually they are able to have that automation department and they're seeing huge gains.
Yeah, definitely take a look at what you're doing and why you're spending so much time, right, to where you feel like you can't touch automation, and dig yourself out of that hole. Because otherwise you'll never get to use it, and then you'll kind of fall behind the curve with other MSPs, and it's not great. I'd rather someone spend, at least a few hours a week with automation rather than 0. Like, at least try and do something. I think you could probably find an hour or 2 a week just to start to learn it, start to just automate step by step in some smaller processes, and work your way to kind of getting out of that hole so you can really spend it full time.
So starting from a MSP who is just entering into Roost, has no configuration set up, anything like that, and is saying that, I would honestly say, just like, sorry, I forget your name. Chris. Just like Chris said, what is taking up so much of your time exactly? And I would start looking into just chipping away at adding the integrations that you need that are integral. So, if you use Office a lot, add in that 365 integration, add in your RMM integration, add in your ConnectWise integration. And as long as you have permission structure set out, for example, 365 GDAP permissions, Roost helps a lot with those configurations and being able to add those in quickly. And then from there, I would just go ahead and start looking at the crates, and I would roll one out, and for example, a new user onboarding, and then just essentially work from there, work backwards. And hey, this may have only saved, 5 or 10 minutes because it doesn't do a whole lot that we need, but we're starting to show that, hey, we can save time with these types of functions, and then start just kind of slowly chipping away at it as you can.
Yeah, for me, it's we actually have a case study on our website that goes into detail on this. There's a partner called Gareth Smith over in the UK, and he actually did exactly what you said, Austin. He had a very, very busy MSP, but he took 2 hours every Monday to kind of, his words, tinker in Roost, and eventually, like you guys were saying, he eventually kind of did a little here, kept some other stuff manual, slowly built it up until he had his first workflow. That first workflow was then able to give him another additional hour per week. So then he had 3 hours every Monday. So to the point now where he's a full-time automation specialist at his MSP. So we went from 2 hours a week to doing everything all week because the business owner can kind of see the value. For me, it's pretty simple. The time thing, I'm a little bit more cheeky about it. I think if you're someone saying that you don't have time to get into automation, it's kind of like saying you don't have time to learn how to ride a bicycle because you're too busy walking everywhere. So with that, thank you so much for your time, guys. Can we give a big round of applause for these guys?